Let's get this sports podcast party started, all right?
The JAYREELZ podcast.
What is happening, my good people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic, in excellent spirits. Uncut, unfiltered, unedited, true sports talk without any pomp and circumstance, clickbait, and filler that's out there. You're here for a reason, so kick back, listen, and watch for yourself as this is the JAYREELZ podcast with Joe JAYREELZ. For my first timers, welcome aboard. And for those who've been banging with me going back to the very beginning, somewhere in the middle, or even as early as this past Thursday, I welcome you guys and gals back. And now we're just one game away from the Fall Classic. We need to find out who is going to win up in Toronto for a Game 7. The two best words in the sports vernacular that anybody can listen to. And yes, we could talk about Super Bowl and championship weekend, but nothing tops a Game 7, whether it's in the NBA, NHL, or in this case, baseball, where an ALCS and an AL pennant will be crowned this evening. And of course, I'll get to the Dodgers in a moment. I want to start off with the baseball just so I can get it out of the way, where we could dive into a lot of the football, which was a crazy weekend, as well as the NBA tipping off tomorrow and some NHL news and notes. Now, as far as the ALCS goes, when we last left you Thursday, we were about to get set for a Game 4, where Max Scherzer was going to go on the mound, and a lot of people thought, is Scherzer going to have it? Is he going to at least have one magic moment for him in his illustrious Hall of Fame career, in which he did put forth a very good effort, to the point where he told his manager to get back in the dugout when he came out. Looked like he was going to pull the hook on him, but give it up. Scherzer pitched very well, gave the Jays exactly what they needed, not only some innings and some length, but with the offense clicking there, where the Blue Jays looked like they were about to get themselves back tied in a series, and they certainly did do so, and then some. And that was big because, just like I said Thursday, in order for this ALCS to have juice, you needed to have a pivotal Game 5, not a situation where there could have been a coronation that night. And you did get that scenario where the Jays were able to get back in the series. They tied it up, and a lot of that is on the shoulders of Max Scherzer. So you got to give him 1,000% credit. Now, was it a vintage performance there by Max Scherzer? Absolutely not. But it's good enough for someone who's 41 years of age, that is certainly on his last legs. You would think that could be quite possibly his last start in the major leagues. Now, we don't know what's going to happen here after tonight. If they do make it to a World Series, it's quite possible you may see him in the World Series, whether in long relief or if he does get another start, whether that means maybe in a Game 4 in Toronto where they're up 2-1 or maybe down 2-1. That we'll have to wait and see. But for Scherzer, to me, he was the big story there, Game 4, and obviously the offense did what they had to do in order for them to get themselves back to a 2-2 deficit. And thanks to Andres Gimenez and him obviously swinging a big bat there in Toronto, or should say in Seattle, with a couple of home runs in Games 3 and 4. And then, of course, you had Vladdy, who continues to scorch the ball and hit the cover off of it at the same time. But now you had this pivotal Game 5, and it was a scenario where it looked like the Mariners were on the ropes, and it certainly were, considering that they were trailing in the game. Now, Eugenio Suarez, which they put out an APB on for, he was quiet throughout the course of this series, but then hit the home run there to make it 1-0. And even with the Blue Jays taking the lead, you felt that it was going to be a matter of time. And it certainly seemed to be the case, because as you get deeper into that game, and it looked like that the Blue Jays were going to go back to Toronto up 3-2, and it looked like there could be a coronation there last night. But Johnny on the spot, Cal Raleigh, 8th inning, hits the home run to tie the game. And that's what propelled the rally by the Mariners to get them to a point where Suarez came up with the bases loaded, and all he did was hit a deep fly ball over the right field wall to make it 6-2, and everybody in Seattle was going crazy, to the point where a lot of people thought, up 3-2, with them winning the first 2 games in Toronto the way they did, that could it possibly be a situation where the Mariners could punch their ticket to their first ever World Series there north of the border last night? Well, as we fast forward to yesterday, and when you had a guy like Trey Yesavage, who did not have a good performance there in Game 2, and was hoping to reclaim some of that magic that you saw there in the Yankee series in Game 2 of the division series, well, for the Blue Jays, they were able to not only outlast the Mariners, but you kind of wonder whether the travel had a little bit of an effect. Maybe it was a situation where after the game on Friday, not to say that they partied into the night, but again, to get back on a plane, fly Seattle to Toronto. And I understand Toronto had to do the same thing, but I'm sure after the 3 days and getting the 2 wins that they needed just to get back home, I'm sure they just showered, got out of town as quick as possible just so they could get back to their friendly confines and to their homes and to their beds without having to deal with any of the situations regarding Seattle, family, travel, tickets, and things of that nature. And what you saw there last night was Logan Gilbert, a guy who did not have it there, was unable to get into the 5th inning, and as it was, or maybe he did get into the 5th, I should know that off the top of my head, but he did not pitch well. 4 runs, 7 hits. Addison Barger, who had the first RBI of the game with that single, and then they got the 2 runs there. They could have had more, but a great play there by Suarez to stop Vladimir Guerrero Jr. from blowing the game open there to either make it 4-0, but it was 2-0 at the time, but then Barger did hit a 2-run homer to make it 4-0, and you kind of thought to yourself, we may see a Game 7. And as it was, with Vladdy punctuating it with another home run to make it 5-0 in the middle innings, and even though Toronto tried to, you would think they were doing their best to try to get themselves to a Game 7, and even though Seattle did make an effort there to cut the deficit there late, but it was not enough as the Blue Jays were able to win a Game 6 that they absolutely had to have, and therefore you have your game tonight, which, let's face it, it is a coin flip. We know that Seattle, they could play and win in Toronto, as we saw early in the series. We understand that Toronto has all the momentum. Your pitching matchup is Shane Bieber there for the Blue Jays, where you have George Kirby going for the Mariners. Now, they do have the edge at pitcher with Kirby, but you know this is a game with all hands on deck. So no matter what's going to happen here, other than Logan Gilbert, but you're going to probably see Kevin Gausman there tonight. You're going to see a bunch of the other pitchers who you may or may not have seen throughout the course, Luis Castillo being one, and I'm sure it's going to be a scenario where they're going to have to throw everything in the kitchen sink just to get to a World Series, and I'm sure that's how the Dodgers want it when you think about it, and more on the Dodgers in a second. But tonight, how I look at it is, Toronto has the momentum. I know the pitching matchup may not be in their favor, but I would think even if Seattle gets off to an early lead, that may not hold enough weight because Toronto can explode at any moment. I think, could I see a classic? I don't see it right now because a lot of these games, other than you want to say maybe Game 5 because it was close late until Suarez broke it open. But a lot of these games have not been close other than Game 1. These games have been blowouts. So why should I expect all of a sudden, now watch that be the case, the baseball gods will say, all right, now we're going to get a classic here to where it may come down to the last at-bat or last licks there for Toronto in order for them to get to a World Series, or even, better yet, a situation where the Blue Jays are up 4-2 in the ninth and then heroics by Suarez or Cal Raleigh or Julio Rodriguez, who knows? But I would see this series going by the way of what we've seen here for the majority of these 6 games. And I think the Blue Jays will find a way to get themselves to a World Series, which would be a crushing blow for the Mariners. And the other way around, too. If Seattle wins tonight, that's going to be a crushing blow considering it's going to be in their ballpark. And we've seen teams win Game 7s on the road. It's not impossible, people. And I could go through a litany of teams that have won. Off the top of my head, I hate to say it, the 2006 Cardinals winning at Shea Stadium against the Mets. That was a Game 7. And we've seen it even in the World Series where the Cubs beat the then Indians in a Game 7 to win a World Series. I mean, there's a million examples of these teams on the road winning in a Game 7 where you think the home field advantage would favor, in this case, the Blue Jays tonight. But I'm going to say Blue Jays only because they got the wins that they've needed here throughout the series. Down 0-2, as I mentioned, down 3-2, and then now here we are for Game 7 tonight, which who knows who's going to watch. And I will say this. I get it that the game's going to be on Fox, regular Fox, and Fox Sports 1, but it is a crime that the last 2 games have not been on regular Fox. It's been on Fox Sports 1. You want to start your series on Fox Sports 1, maybe not Game 1, but let's say Game 2, Game 3, all right, fine. Or if you want to take the middle games, Game 3 and 4, after the first 2 games are on regular Fox, no problem. Fantastic, as you hear the dog barking in the back. But for them to not have, which would have been a series-clinching game on their big network, And I don't want to hear about the NFL and, oh, well, they had the afternoon game, so we couldn't segue into that's nonsense. So for baseball, that is an injustice to its fans. And even for sports fans that are trying to look for, oh, wait, tonight's a game 6. Seattle could win it. Where can I find it? How come it's not on Fox? Is it on CBS? Is it on ESPN? The regular sports fan isn't in tune to where the schedule is. I mean, maybe if they're watching a series, they know that's Fox Sports 1. All right, fine. But for the good sports fan that's saying, oh, wait a minute, tonight could be a clincher, and here they are bouncing around a million networks to try to find this game, and it's on Fox Sports 1. Terrible job, and that's where baseball needs to fix this moving forward. Are they going to do it? Probably not, because it's going to go to who's going to have the most money and the almighty dollar, but that's another story for another day. But I can't stand it that you got to watch Fox Sports 1, although tonight's game is on Fox, so that's a good thing. Now, they'll be going up against Tampa, Detroit, which obviously that's a big matchup, NFC on Monday Night Football, ABC, the other game's on ESPN, Houston, Seattle. All right, people in Seattle aren't going to care about that as far as the Seahawks go. I wonder, the NFL crowd will get there, but you know everybody's going to have their fingers on the pulse of what's happening in Toronto. So you kind of wonder, locally, everybody's going to watch the Mariners. How many people are going to watch the Seahawks? That remains to be seen. And that's another interesting thing when it comes to the ratings, which I'll segue in a second when it comes to the big picture with the World Series. But that's what you have as far as tonight goes. So I think the Blue Jays will win. They'll find a way. Will it be thrilling? Maybe in the early innings, middle innings, but I can see the game going away late. And the Blue Jays, I feel, will win tonight. Maybe 6-3, could be 7-3, 7-4, who knows. But would I be shocked to see a close game? I guess I can't be, but I would be considering the way the theme of the series has gone, other than Game 1 and maybe a little bit of Game 5. Now, as far as the National League, I mean, really, what is there to talk about? When we look at what the Brewers and their year, and more on that in a second, but did you think that the Dodgers were going to get on a plane to go back to Milwaukee to play in a Game 6? Absolutely not. And the Dodgers showed who's boss. And I understand the magnitude of the series, especially the games in LA. They've been swallowed up by what happened in Game 4 with Shohei Ohtani, as he put forth 6 innings, 3 walks, 2 hits, 10 strikeouts, on top of hitting 3 home runs in a clinching game. Was it a Game 6 or Game 7? No. Was the series already decided before Ohtani even told the rubber? Absolutely, because there was no way that the Brewers, even if they would have won Game 4, they would have gotten out of LA alive. We'll never know, but in my heart, in my mind and soul, no way. But everybody's going to talk about Ohtani, and rightfully so. And I understand you got all of these comparisons. We talk about Babe Ruth. We've had these discussions on the podcast, live streams, etc. But here's what I'm going to say when it comes to the ratings and even a bit about the Ruth and Ohtani comparisons. I'll start with that. Nobody's seen Ruth play, and we know about the numbers. We know about the figure that he was for the time that he was in not only a Red Sox uniform, because he did win titles and pitch there, but more so in a Yankee uniform. And for Ruth, I understand it was the 20s, and ballparks were much bigger. You got to remember that. And I understand Ohtani could hit it out of Yellowstone. Understood. But when you think about Ruth during the time that he played, where the ballparks were enormous, where he was out homering teams by himself, and how he literally saved baseball. Because prior to Ruth, yes, you did have Cobb, you did have Rogers Hornsby, you did have Honus Wagner, but you didn't have a figure larger than life than Babe Ruth, the guy who came in. I don't want to say he was the anti-Lou Gehrig, but Ruth, for all of these stories, the hot dogs, the beer, the woman, he was a big man and even bigger when it came to what he did on the baseball diamond. And Ohtani, yes, we could compare how he pitches. And Ruth was a very good pitcher before he became a right fielder. But I understand a lot of that was during his days in a Red Sox uniform. But with Ruth, he was gargantuan and saved the sport of baseball for what he did. Now, when you want to look at Ohtani, is he going to save baseball, so to speak, considering that in the pecking order of the sports landscape, it's NFL, it's NBA, it's college football, then it's baseball? Now, let me see Let me see Ohtani, and here's step number 1, saved this World Series. And what I mean by that is not to say that he's got to put up these prodigious numbers, and if he does, even better. But when you look back last year when they played the Yankees in the World Series, and Ohtani did not have a good World Series. I understand he had a shoulder ailment, wasn't swinging the bat well, did not pitch. He was unable to pitch because he was coming off the Tommy John. But if he's going to quote unquote save baseball, the ratings are going to have to be for baseball enormous. Now, last year, because it was Yankees-Dodgers, we hadn't seen it in 43 years. The two behemoths, Judge versus Ohtani, LA, New York, we know. But now this is going to be LA, Toronto or LA, Seattle. And we don't know when he's going to pitch. Is he going to pitch in a game 4 and just have that isolated game? Or is it going to be a situation where he may pitch a game 3 and could end up pitching a game 7 if necessary? I mean, we don't know that. It's way too early to tell. But Friday and Saturday night, this coming week, we understand Yankees-Dodgers, the ratings were on average 15 to 16 million people watching, which for baseball is a huge number. But there are no New York Yankees, there's no Aaron Judge. Let me see 15, 16, let me impress me even more, average sports fans or good sports fans, etc., where Ohtani and the Dodgers are getting 20 million people watching. Then you got something cooking. Because if you're going to get game 1, where Ohtani's going to get his at-bats, and whether they play against Seattle or Toronto, if they're only going to get 8, 9, 10, 11 million, baseball's going to do handstands over that. But wait a minute. Ohtani, the biggest figure in baseball, maybe right now in sports, a guy that everybody has to watch. And I understand he's Japanese, so maybe there's not an overwhelming favorite for people to just be glued to see what this guy's going to do. But he has become this century's Babe Ruth in that regard. So let me see the people who are clamoring for Ohtani, the people who want to see him. Let's see it in the ratings against teams that are good, but not are the pinnacle of the sport, whether it be the Red Sox as far as their tradition, history, or even Yankees for that matter, who supersede everybody. Even the Dodgers for that matter, although the Dodgers are close, but come on. 27 World Series to, I believe the Dodgers have what, 9 or 10? You can't compare it. Wait, if I have to think back, 55, no, even less than that, it may have 8. So I don't want to hear about Ohtani being better than Ruth in that regard. And I get it that the new baseball writer, the nouveau writer that's going to look at it like, oh, hey, Ruth can't even shine his shoes. Time out. He is Babe Ruth, George Herman Ruth, to those who don't know. So that's number 1. And number 2, the ratings. Let's see them back it up. But the Ohtani-Ruth comparisons are ridiculous. I mean, Ruth, 60 home runs, out-homering teams. Ohtani's not doing that. And yes, he's going to probably win his 4th MVP in 5 years, which, if you have to go back, the MVP didn't start, I believe, until the 30s. So, and Ruth, I'm sure, would have won all those MVPs in the years that he hit those home runs, and to compare the numbers. But I digress. Let me pivot from there. But you can't argue what Ohtani has done. You can't argue that that was probably the best postseason performance that anybody's ever seen. Now, obviously, he's a unicorn because you don't have a lot of players that are pitching and hitting in the same game. And Ohtani's doing that. And because we have not seen that, therefore, you have to put it up there as one of the best ever. And although it was in a clinching game, I get it, but it was a game 4. So there was no drama. There was no suspense in that regard. It wasn't a game 7 or even a game 6 for that matter, where, let's say, a la Reggie Jackson, if you haven't checked the channel, subscribe, people. I implore you to do so. I put out a little sports history lesson on Reggie hitting the 3 home runs in the 77 World Series there to clinch the World Series for the Yankees for the first time that they had done so in 15 years. They had that drought from 62 to 77. I digress. So hopefully you get a chance to check that out, subscribe, etc. But for the Dodgers and that performance and everything else, and I could talk about how they're ruining baseball and are they bad for baseball, etc. And yes, Dave Roberts did come out and say, oh, let's get 4 more wins so we can really ruin baseball. Are they ruining it? I got to say they're not. Once upon a time, I may have said so, whether it was the evil empire of the Yankees or even Steve Cohen, for that matter, a few years back. And we can look at the Dodgers and what they've done now, but they're not breaking any rules. They're not doing anything that is illegal. They're not doing anything that is like, hey, well, they got to investigate this. No. Now, the deferred contracts, obviously, if that's legal, they're doing that too. And they're going to have to pay guys from the year 2035 till probably the end of the century. And we can get off of the Bobby Bonilla day and we'll have a Shohei Ohtani day or a Blake Snell day or a Tyler Glasnow day or whatever other guys that they sign, Yoshinobu Yamamoto day. Yeah, we can joke about that when we get to that time. But right now, the Dodgers, who's beating them? Nobody. I don't care if Seattle or Toronto combine themselves and Cal Raleigh's playing on the Blue Jays if they win, or Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is on the Mariners if they win, doesn't matter. The Dodgers are going to win this World Series. It's what, 4, 5, or 6? It's not going 7. They're not going to get pushed to the brink, I don't think. And even though you have a scenario where you have a few days between now and Friday before the World Series, which was big last night, because at least in the sports fan and the baseball fans' consciousness, knowing that there's a game tonight heading into the start of the week, and I understand Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're not going to have anything. All right, fine. But because you have a Game 7, and hopefully whatever drama, intrigue, etc. could come out of tonight, and even if there's not, but if you have something, it's not like you go into this week and all you have to watch tonight is the Monday night games or whatever hockey games that are on. You have a Game 7 tonight, and at least you have that to wrap your arms around and look forward to see who's going to go up against the Dodgers come Friday in the World Series. And of course, on Thursday's podcast, I will have a preview of the World Series where we'll really unpack what's going on there. And of course, a Wednesday live stream, high noon Eastern time on the YouTube channel. Definitely want to check that out. We'll talk a little bit about the World Series, but I won't have a prediction and go fully in until the podcast on Thursday. Now, is there anything else I need to discuss? Baseball? No, that is it. I know Aaron Judge won't need surgery on that right elbow, although Carlos Rodon did get his elbow cleaned out, bone spurs, things of that nature. He could miss opening day, maybe by a couple of weeks, so obviously, you're not going to worry about that until you get to spring training. So just thought to throw that in there, considering they had their State of the Union, Brian Cashman, Aaron Boone, and yeah, it's pretty much the same vanilla nonsense that you've gotten here over the last few years. Oh, we feel we're that close, and I'm paraphrasing, of course. But we feel we're that close. We, did take a step or two back, but we have the talent. We didn't have Garrett Cole, blah, blah, blah. I mean, please, I'm not going to waste any more time talking about that, so. All right, now let me get to the NFL because there's a couple of storylines from yesterday that I have to discuss. And should I just go for the negative right off the bat? I guess so. What the hell? Brian Daboll may have coached his way out of New York with that performance yesterday. Now, it's probably not going to happen. And if they beat the Eagles this week, and considering it looks like the Eagles have gotten themselves back a little bit by beating the Vikings yesterday, and I know there was some controversy there, the touchdown by TJ Hawkinson, where it looked like it was a catch, but in this day and age, you don't know from 1 second to the next, and therefore it was overturned, which would have made the deficit a lot closer, but that wasn't the case. But anyway, the Eagles did win, and Jalen Hurts had a big game and was throwing the ball all over the lot, which you haven't really seen that much. But for the Giants, first and foremost, when you're up 19-0 late in the third quarter, and I understand your kicker, Jude I can't pronounce his name, McAtenemy, I believe is how you pronounce it, McAtenemy. He missed that extra point at 13-0. All right, you got to deal with it. But why is the coach going for 2? It's 19-0. You had this crazy touchdown and bounce off of Wendell Robinson, and then it was caught by the tight end, Theo Johnson, into the end zone. And you think to yourself, wow, the Giants are going to go into Denver and literally beat the brakes off of the Broncos. Why he went for 2 there is just mind-bogglingly stupid, because when you're up already 3 scores and you tack on the extra point, and I get it, you want to have an even 21 just in case the Broncos come back, and as they did, they came back and won. But why did you go for 2 there is inexplicable. You're ahead by 3 scores. You don't need to make it a pretty 21. You kick the extra point, you're still up 3 scores, and who knows, maybe they missed an extra point along the way. As it was, they got the touchdown at 19-6, and they went for 2, and you understand why they went for 2 there, because they cut the deficit from instead of 12, it's 11. So where they could get a touchdown, 2-point conversion, and a field goal. So you can understand why Sean Payton did that. Now the Giants, they get a touchdown to make it 26-8 with about 8 minutes to go. And you're thinking the game is done. They're up by 18. No problem. So then you have a scenario where the Broncos score a touchdown. They make it 26-14. They go for 2 there, which I thought was stupid first guess. Because if you kick the extra point, you're still down by 11. Similar to where you were at 19-8. They get the 2-pointer. All right, fine. They got away with it. Because think about it. If they miss the 2-point conversion, they're down by 12 where they need 2 touchdowns. Not the touchdown, 2-point, and a field goal. So that was dumb on Sean Payton's part, but got away with it. And considering it was 26-8 with what? Less than 5 minutes to go? No, less than 6 minutes. So now you have the costly turnover right after the touchdown at 26-16. Broncos get the touchdown. It is now 26-23. And of course, they went for 2 there. No, they didn't go for 2. They got the extra point. Whereas, and I get it, you could say JAYREELZ, that's why you go for 2, whatever. Yes, understood. But you also got to look at the flip side. If they didn't get it there, let's just say at 26-14, and they get the touchdown, and they kick the extra point, it's 26-21. So now they're down by 5. So let's say even if they kick the extra point there, let's say if it was 26-15, they get the touchdown, they can still go for 2, and that's that. And yes, you can look at the logic. All right, they went for 2, but first guess, I thought it was stupid because they would have been down 12 instead. But now as it is, it's now nice and tidy. You go from 26-8, 16, 23. What do the Giants do after that? 3 and out. And then the Broncos come down, touchdown, 30-26, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, geez. But the Giants have time. 1 timeout left. And what do? They punch it into the end zone. Dubious at first, but Jackson Dart gets through. And Dart did not throw the ball well, but he did have a solid game. I'm not going to kill him because he did march down the field. They got the touchdown, 32-30. And what happens? They missed the extra point. Mind you, he kicked the extra point when it was 25-8 at the time to make it 26-8. And that Jude McAtenemy, I'm sure if he's not cut yet, he's probably going to get cut this week. So now it's 32-30. And you knew when he missed the extra point, the Giants were going to lose. And yes, I understand they had that big pass play to Cortland Sutton at the middle of the field. And then the catch there later on, I forgot what was it, first in. Yeah, it was at the Giant 40, which obviously set them up beautifully there to get the game-winning kick. And then, no shock, 2 seconds left. Kick is up. It's good. And the Broncos win 33-32. The Giants had a golden opportunity to win a big game and to win 3 in a row in the process, to put themselves in a position where they have to go to Philadelphia and maybe get above 500. And, oh, man, that is a swift kick to the nuts. I hate to be blunt, but that is just a terrible loss. And one that could get them fired in the grand scheme of things. Because if they lose badly in Philly, and although the schedule lightens up a little bit, but, yeah, that could be the end-all be-all for Brian Daboll. And one more time, 19-0, I said to myself, what are we doing here? And they could tell me, oh, you've never been a coach, you don't know what it takes. No, he kicks the extra point there at 20-0. Guess what happens? As the game unfolded, and right, would it have been a guarantee he would have made the extra point? No, but he did make the extra point at, like I just said, to make it 26-8, makes the extra point there, and then you have a situation where the game is tied going into overtime at 33-30. And that's it. End of story. Case closed. But obviously, we'll never know. And what do I know? I'm just a sports talk podcast host. Now, the other thing is are the Indianapolis Colts for real? They go to LA. They beat the Chargers and beat them up pretty good. 6-1. If the Lions beat the Buccaneers tonight, the best record in the sport goes to the Indianapolis Colts. Well, all I'm going to say is this. Great start. Totally unexpected. Good for them. And I will say, that's great for them. But they could go 14-3, have the 1 seed in the AFC. Do you think I'm going to believe they're going to be in the AFC Championship, even with a bye, and automatically think that they're going to be a Super Bowl contender? Hell no. What did I just witness with the Brewers here over the last couple of weeks? And we've seen this movie many times before. I get it. Well, you can't compare a team of the past. No, I get that. But you mean to tell me that the Colts, even with Peyton Manning, when he was 14-0 one year and they were 14-2, they didn't even make it to a Super Bowl. They didn't even get that far. That's Peyton Manning. Why am I going to think with Daniel Jones and Shane Steichen, who are you going to really trust in a big spot? As a guy that you're going to automatically think, oh yeah, I'm going to 4th and 4 at his own 40, at his opposing team's 40-yard line, and he's going to end up punting the ball instead of trying to go for it? I mean, come on. No way. Sorry. And I get it. They have an easy schedule, and they're probably, who knows, they're going to be a top 3 seed, you would think. But You mean to tell me that who could be a 4 seed? It's probably going to be the, I don't know, off the top of my head, 4 seed. It won't be the Chiefs. You mean to tell me, and they play later on this year, if Pittsburgh's a 4 seed, you mean to tell me they can't go into Indianapolis and beat them? Now, I understand Pittsburgh has their own problems, which I guess I have to get to in a little bit, but I'm not sold on this Colts team just yet. No way. Not at all. And I don't care who they beat along the way. And they could even beat Pittsburgh and face them again in January, and I still wouldn't be sold. So we'll have to wait and see. That's how I look at that with the Colts. And I understand, you got to give them their props to this point, but big picture, do I think they're going to be a threat? No, I'm not sold. Sorry. In the mortal words of Chuck D and Public Enemy, don't believe the hype. Now, as far as the rest of the games yesterday, I mean, you had some bad games as I go ahead and trim some of the fat here. Am I going to get into Mike McDaniel out on the plank there in Miami? And they need to fire Chris Greer, the GM, and if Stephen Ross could sell the team, he should. He's 85 years of age. Cleveland wins 31-6. There's nothing to unpack there. I know maybe a bit of a scare there for the Patriot fan is Drake May. I don't know if he's going to be in concussion protocol, but he did take a big hit there yesterday, shaking his head as you saw. I'm sure you checked the highlight, but they beat Tennessee 31-13. Really, is there anything to discuss there? Absolutely not. The Chiefs, everybody's going to say, oh, watch out, the Chiefs are back. Come on, they beat the Vegas Raiders 31-0. Shut them out. Anything to unpack there? Absolutely not. The game in London, to me, that's more of an indictment on Jacksonville. Now, I understand the Rams are a good team and certainly can't disrespect what Sean McVay is going to do and what they have done. But they were down 28-0 and they lost 35-7. And Matthew Stafford connecting 3 times with Devontae Adams. I mean, that is a big step back in my eyes if you're the Jaguars, considering if you're going to be a team that's going to try to do something, do some damage here in the AFC South to try to keep themselves in line with what the Colts are doing. So right there, another bad loss. Carolina and the Jets, all right, so now it looks like Tyrod Taylor could be a starter moving forward as the Justin Fields continues to regress. And I understand that that's a game that nobody had circled or we're going to watch intently, but the Carolina Panthers, listen, they're 4-3. Give it up. They're going to beat the teams in front of them, and if that means that it's an 0-7 Jet team, then so be it. But you got to wonder whether or not Tyrod Taylor has to be the guy moving forward. Does he not? I mean, ugh. The Bears, hey, listen, they're over 500 too, but they played the Saints 26-14. Should I get geeked up over that? Absolutely not. Green Bay beat Arizona. I know that Micah Parsons had 3 sacks. The kicker, one of the kickers, I believe right before the half, kicked a 61-yard field goal, which is a joke. I mean, these are chip shots now. But that was a good win for the Packers. They were fighting tooth and nail against the Cardinals, although it was Jacoby Brissett because you had Kyler Murray leave with an injury. But even Jacoby Brissett put the Packers sweating at the brow. So, yeah. Am I going to go crazy over Green Bay? Now, they play in Pittsburgh this Sunday night with Aaron Rodgers going up against his old team, so that should be an interesting matchup. Then you had the Cowboys beat up on the Commanders, and they went going away there late first half into the third quarter. I know Dak Prescott, everybody's talking about, wow, he's been impressive. He's done this, and he has. No doubt. But one more time. Can we see this in January? And not to put it all on him, because that defense also has, 27 points. It was 27-7 at the half. He did throw 2 interceptions, including a pick 6. That's why I said, enough with the Dak Prescott. We could talk about he's playing well, so on and so forth. MVP, no, stop. Stop. And in the game last night, I know it was an impressive game, and I was wrapped up in the baseball, but I did not watch the Niners beat the Falcons. And the Falcons wouldn't have impressed me if they would have beaten them last night, obviously with Mac Jones. But 20-10, I know Christian McCaffrey had a big game, but am I going to get crazy over that matchup? No. And you have the 2 Monday night games, as you know, starting off with Tampa at Detroit. Very good game, which could swallow up the early portion of a Game 7 with the Mariners and the Blue Jays. But the nightcap is Houston-Seattle, as I talked about before. But again, I think this is the last of the doubleheaders, and thank God. I can't stand the doubleheaders, as you know, not to belabor that point. But that is your NFL. Not a great game, not a great Sunday. Absolutely not. And the Steelers, led 10-0. All right, flying high, doing well. But here's the problem that I'm going to have, and this is twofold. Joe Flacco's been with the Bengals for about 5 minutes. What was the defensive game plan against Joe Flacco, who went 31 for 47, had a field day against that defense, and you just knew that when Pat Freiermuth stumbled, bumbled into the end zone to make it 31-30, they had plenty of time left on the clock, and I believe 2 timeouts, and you just knew that they were going to come on down the field and kick a field goal to win the game. And as it was, Jalen Ramsey, who owned up to it in the postgame, but the secondary was atrocious. Jalen Ramsey being the big culprit, giving up that sideline pass to T. Higgins, which set up the game-winning field goal. But their defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. And for Joe Flacco, and I get it, perfect in the pocket, beautiful spiral, great arm. It wasn't until late in their next to last possession where they actually got a sack of Flacco. And I know that early in the game they got to it, but still, it was just a pathetic performance by their defense. And they have been just awful. And to think, with the likes of T.J. Watt, Cameron Hayward, Joey Porter, who's been back, Jalen Ramsey, I go on down the list, and they have been deplorable. Now, who knows, with this mini bye and with Green Bay coming into the building, we'll see, but that was just pathetic. And you can't knock the offense. Aaron Rodgers moved the ball, he had 4 touchdowns, did what he had to do. But the defense, it's all on them. And Tomlin, can I get on him too for some of his decision making? I can, but let me move on. I got other things to get to, and especially with the college football, because there is lots to unpack there. You talk about a wild and crazy weekend, and it started off on Friday where Louisville beat Miami. Carson Beck throws 4 interceptions. Bad game for him. And although Miami's going to be fine in the grand scheme of things, considering the conference that they play in, and even if they suffer another loss, they're going to make it into the playoff. But man, Carson Beck, you talk about taking not 1, not 2, 4 steps back in that game. Ugh, that was pathetic. So that was just the beginning of what was to transpire over the weekend, where you had Georgia beating Trinidad Chambliss. To me, that's the best name. You got to love that name. And Ole Miss, Gunnar Stockton had a big-time performance, 4 touchdowns, 289 yards, as Georgia gets themselves back and moves up in the rankings, which I'll break down in a moment. And even though Ole Miss, all right, they should still be fine, but they can't suffer any other big-time defeats here along the way, because the SEC, as you know, they're going to cannibalize one another, and if they lose another SEC team or lose another SEC game to a team that's going to be fighting for the top 12, they could be on the outside looking in. And you look at Vandy beating LSU. That's another situation where LSU, now you have to wonder whether or not they're going to be hanging in the balance there when you get to the latter part of November into December. And Vandy, they made up from the Alabama loss, so good for them as they try to get themselves some decent footing to see whether or not they're going to be a part of this playoff picture. Then as far as the upsets, another one, Texas Tech losing to Arizona State. They get that last-second touchdown. 34 seconds left, and Sam Levitt, who is obviously very good in the game for Arizona State, and that is a not a crippling loss, but Texas Tech, that's going to hang over your head for the rest of the year. Hopefully they can snap out of it and still continue to play well and put themselves in a good position to where they can get themselves in a playoff, but that's one they're going to take a hit for. The Fighting Irish, who knock out USC there, Jeremiah Love with 228 yards on the ground. Then you had Jadarian Price had that 100-yard kickoff. This was after USC took the lead, and then they were able to beat the Trojans there in South Bend. So that was a big win there, and USC takes a big hit there as far as their chances of making it to the college football playoffs. So that was a big win there by Notre Dame. So you had all that was wrapped up in the weekend between Georgia Ole Miss, Vandy LSU, Penn State losing. I'm just throwing them in the mix because with the new coach there, Terry Smith, they've now lost 4 in a row, 0-4 in the Big Ten. Now they play Ohio State next. Watch them beat Ohio State. Well, yeah. Good luck with that there, Nittany Lions. But with all that being said, you had just a crazy weekend. Upsets, teams that were in the SEC taking L's, but should still be part of the mix. And then you had Billy Napier fired from Florida after a 3-4 start. And you kind of knew that was coming. They felt, and this was after a win where they said, you know what? We're going to show you the door. And that's a tough job. I don't even know who the interim is at the moment, but you would think that Florida is going to try to find their guy and make sure that the program is in good footing moving forward because, yeah, any more losses to the Miamis of the world and Florida State, who they'll play later on, yeah, that's just not going to fly there in Gainesville. So, and then you also had Curt Cignetti extend 8 years, $93 million. Here's my question for Indiana, though. You got your coach and your quarterback there, Fernando Mendoza. I believe he's a sophomore, and I don't think he would come out unless he just lights the rest of the year on fire as far as his stats are concerned. But are they going to be able to recruit? Because you're in a Big Ten where people are going to want to go to Michigan. People want to go to Ohio State. Some are going to want to go to Penn State. Does anybody want to go to a basketball school? Now you got Cignetti, and unless he's going to be the John Calipari of college football, then maybe they'll have a shot. But yes, they may have their coach, but is Indiana now going to be the hotbed? The press is going to be on them. They don't really have anybody left on the schedule. They do pay Penn State, and who knows, maybe they'll look at that as their Super Bowl. But they don't really have a stout schedule. What's going to matter is that Big Ten championship game and then obviously what they do moving forward. But, yeah, I don't know if they're going to get the big-time recruits, whether it's the pass rusher, whether it's the big receiver, whether it's the linebacker. So, yeah, a lot of success now, and kudos, he got the bag. Congratulations. But let's see who they're going to recruit here when you get to the beginning of the year, and if they are knocked out early on or don't have the long run that people expect them to, which me, again, I'll believe it when I see it. So that's what you have there. And then the other thing is, too, and I'm just throwing this as an addendum. Does anybody know where Curry College is? Has anybody even heard of Curry College? Well, that's in Milton, Massachusetts. It's a Division III school. And there was a player by the name of Monty Quinn who, in a game against Nichols, Nichols, not Nickels, Nichols, scored 7 touchdowns, had 20 carries in the game. You couldn't even guess how many yards he had. By me saying that, you probably think, oh, geez, what do you have? 300 yards? He had to have 300. 350? No, go higher. 400? Nope, higher than that. Wait a minute. 450? Nope, higher. 475? Higher. 500? Higher. He ended up with 522 yards on the ground. I bring it up only because if you're wondering who has the record for the most yards in NCAA Division I, that belongs to Samaji Perine, the current running back of the Bengals, who when at Oklahoma, I believe it was in 2014, rushed for 437? I gotta look that up. I had that over here somewhere. Yeah, I looked that up. I believe he had 427 yards. This kid did 522. Now, Nichols, I don't know. Is it a Pop Warner team? I couldn't even tell you. But when you do the math, which is actually, you can't even wrap your head around. He was averaging 25 yards a carry and then some. You can't make it up. And that's the only reason why I bring it up. And he actually broke the record set by Cartel Brooks in 2013, which he rushed for 465 playing for Heidelberg. Again, these are schools I never heard of, and they're Division III, so who would know? But there you go. Just thought to throw that in there because when he had, and I saw 522, I thought to myself, who has the Division I record? And there it is, Samaje Perine having that. So now here's your top, I'll go 15 in the country. Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Miami, who was number 2, goes all the way to 9, and Indiana moves up to 2, where they were 3. Texas A&M 3, Alabama, Georgia, round out the top 5. Oregon, Georgia Tech, Ole Miss, Miami, Vandy are your top 10. So Vandy moves up to 10. That's where LSU was. Ole Miss, who was 4, drops down to 8. Then you have Notre Dame, Oklahoma, that's your 12. Texas Tech, Missouri, and wait, did I have that wrong? Hold on. BYU, ND, Oklahoma, Texas Tech, Missouri. So BYU's 11, Notre Dame 12, Oklahoma 13, Texas Tech 14, and Missouri 15. Where you have Tennessee 17, where they lost to Alabama, and then LSU down to 20, as you know, losing to Vandy. And Alabama's looking like a stout team. Alabama, I don't want to say they're all the way back just yet, but they are certainly right there, considering they're 4th in the nation. So that is your college football. Now, let me turn my attention. I'm going to do NBA as I lace up the high tops. Couple of quickies. One, Kevin Durant, 2 years, $90 million extension. Could have gotten 120, but he figured some flexibility for the team by not taking the other $30 million, putting it towards the future, which is good for him, and he already has enough money. Even on this contract extension, he will now have the most money earned in NBA history, even over LeBron. I believe he's at almost $600 million that he's earned. So, and it would have been over $600 million if he would have got that 30 mil, but he'll have 2 years after this year where he's going to make $45 million a year. So kudos to KD. Now, the over-unders, I'll break them down tomorrow on the NFL, NBA preview. But as I pull that up, so here's the list of teams, and they're alphabetical order. So here's where we'll go. Start with Atlanta, 46.5. My beloved Celtics, 41.5. Remember, no Tatum. Brooklyn, and I believe that's the lowest number of all. No, actually Utah is. Wow. Brooklyn, 19.5. Charlotte, 27.5. Chicago, 33.5. Cleveland, 56.5, which I believe is the second highest. Dallas, 41.5. Remember, no Kyrie for most of the year. Denver, 53.5. Detroit, 46.5. Golden State, 47.5. I smell under there for some reason. Houston, 52.5. Indiana, 37.5. No Tyrese Halliburton. Clippers, 47.5. Lakers, 46.5. No LeBron for the first 3 weeks. Memphis, 39.5. Miami, 37.5. Milwaukee, 43.5. I'm going to tell you right now, that 43.5, you'll get my 6 tomorrow, but you know where I'm going with that. Minnesota, 49.5. New Orleans, 30.5. New Orleans, 30.5. Zion coming in all svelte? I don't know. The Knicks, 53.5. Here is your number 1, Oklahoma City. Remember, earlier when I talked about what was the team that had the highest? Cleveland, 56th, or second highest, I should say. All right, what is Oklahoma City? 58.5? 60.5? No. 62.5. And remember, they won 68 last year. Orlando, 51.5. Philly, 42.5. Phoenix, 30.5. Portland, 34.5. San Antonio, 44.5. Sacramento 35.5. Toronto 39.5. Utah, your lowest 18.5. Wizards 20.5. You'll get that all on my preview tomorrow, or at least the 6. And what the hell, I'll say it. Milwaukee 43.5 is an over because how weak the East is. To me, they're an over. Now, if he gets hurt, whatever. I don't know Damian Lillard either, but, and listen, Giannis is going to have to carry a ginormous load. But all he has to do is win 44. They're 44-38, especially in a weak Eastern Conference. I got them as an over. So you get my other 5 tomorrow. And as far as the schedule here in the early part of the week, I was very surprised, and I don't know if they did this on purpose, considering that they're not going to have a big season because their best player is out. But generally when you have an NBA Finals rematch, it's usually maybe right around Christmas, before Christmas, after Christmas. You get it one game when the football season's done so it could get their shine, their due. But Thursday night, 3 days into the NBA season on ESPN, which looks like they're going to overtake the TNT slot because, you know, TNT had the Thursday night 7 or 8 and 10:30 or 7:30 and 10. Oklahoma City at Indiana. And I don't know when their second game is, but it's probably going to be soon after that because usually the teams that make the finals, they get the highlight game. So they'll get back then, it would be the TNT game and then the ESPN ABC game. So now it looks like you're going to get the ESPN game and maybe the NBC game because NBC and Peacock are going to ring in the NBA New Year starting tomorrow. And of course, with the schedule, you'll have the Oklahoma City Thunder have the banner raised and the rings brought out to where they are going to host that first game. And again, NBC and Peacock, the Houston Rockets will come to town and Kevin Durant. And then the nightcap is Golden State at LA, hoping for another Curry-LeBron matchup. But LeBron, because of the sciatica, is going to be out 3 to 4 weeks. So there goes that matchup. But Wednesday, Cleveland at the Knicks, Brooklyn at Charlotte, Miami at Orlando. Should I go? I guess I'll go through all of them. I was going to say, there's some game. Are you really going to get wrapped up in Sacramento at Phoenix or Minnesota at Portland? I guess for the opening week, I have to say so. Toronto at Atlanta, Miami, Orlando, Philly at Boston, New Orleans at Memphis, Washington and Milwaukee, LA Clippers at Utah, San Antonio at Dallas, and then Minnesota, Portland. So that rounds out your Wednesday schedule. And then Thursdays, Oklahoma City, Indiana, Denver, Golden State. But on Thursday, we'll talk about the weekend schedule at that time. Now, let me wrap up as I take a trip around the ice, NHL, as I pull up what's happening there. And the first thing that comes to mind are some of the teams, and 2 weeks into the season, 2 weeks tomorrow, here's what I got. Red Wings playing very well. And if you're the Hockeytown USA and a fan of the Red Wings, I'm sure you got to feel pretty good about your start. Now, mind you, they're 4-1, won 4 in a row, but I take that back. You're now 5-1 and won 5 in a row, and you beat Edmonton yesterday. 10 points. Now, you don't have the best record because the best record belongs to the Carolina Hurricanes, and no surprise that they're off to a flying start, 5-0. The last true undefeated team in the sport because Colorado, 5-0-1, you got an overtime loss, so I'm not counting you guys. But give it up for what the Hurricanes have done. Tremendous start, and I figure they're going to have a big-time year, but do I trust them fully? Your goaltender is Frederik Andersen. But the teams that have also gone off to big surprises or good starts, Canadiens, 4-2. And I understand they made it to the postseason last year, but still, they crawled into the playoffs. Devils are 4-1. Penguins, a bit of a surprise at 4-2. Utah 4-2, that's a surprise. Blackhawks over 500 here in the early going, 3-2-2. That you have to like. Dallas with a very slow start for them, 3-2. And then out west, Both Vegas and Seattle have not lost yet. Vegas 4-2, the Kraken 3-0-2. Edmonton a bit of a slow start, 2-3. They lost the last 3 games at the Island against the Islanders, in New Jersey, and then yesterday, as I mentioned, against Detroit. And San Jose is the only team without a win, although they have 2 overtime losses, so they do have 2 points. And Calgary off to a 1-5 start. That's pretty much your surprises and disappointments here early on. And the Bruins have lost 4 in a row, so they got off to a 3-0 start, as well as the Panthers. Panthers were 3-0, and the Bruins were 3-0. You're thinking, oh, geez. Since then, both in 4-game losing streaks. So, that's what you have there with the NHL. Is there anything else I could unpack there? Yeah, a couple of notes. Brady Tkachuk, who's out 6 to 8 weeks. We talked about that hand injury and not knowing the timetable, but he's going to be officially out for that length of time, up to 2 months. So the Ottawa Senators are not going to have their best player. And Alexander Ovechkin got his 898th career goal. And the Capitals have won 4 in a row, so you got to give it up. They've actually played pretty well here to get themselves in good stead in the Metropolitan Division. Actually, let me pull that up. Yeah, they're tied with the Penguins 4-2. And the Devils, they played less games with 4-1, so they do have a couple of teams that they're looking over. 3 teams, in fact, in the Metropolitan Division. But the last thing on the docket is Joe Quenneville. He made his return to Chicago over the weekend as coach of the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. And remember, he did make his return during the COVID years, but then upon coming back when the whole allegations of the sexual misconduct with the former, I think it was Chris Barch, the former Blackhawk player, where an assistant coach got involved, and obviously the head coach at the time, Quenneville, who did win the 3 cups in Chicago, was complicit and therefore was jettisoned as a coach and then was on the Florida Panther staff before he was let go. And then they had Andrew Burnett in there, and then obviously Paul Maurice after that. But he said it was good to be back because at the time during COVID, there were no fans in the building. Now, I don't know what the response was. I got something in my eye if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify. Yeah, for whatever the reason, I'm trying to get it out, but we're just about ready to land this plane in a moment, so you won't have to see me just scratching at my eye. But Quenneville made his return, said it was nice to come back, obviously had a lot of great memories, and didn't get the just due during the case of COVID when he came back to the United Center. And again, I didn't really follow what was going on as far as what his return was like. Did he get a big ovation? I'm sure he probably did, considering that he did win 3 cups for the city of Chicago, although you could argue him being complicit with the whole scenario regarding that player and the coaching staff, etc., the sexual assaultment, harassment, so on and so forth. But yeah, that's what you have there with the NHL. And as far as the schedule, the early part of the week, tonight, Minnesota at New York to play the Rangers. And can the Rangers score a goal in the first 8 minutes? If they do not, they will have the all-time record for the longest drought to start a home schedule to a season, where the old Pittsburgh Pirates of 1928 had that record, 187 minutes and such seconds, and the Rangers are already at 180. So if they do not score a goal within the first 8 minutes, they will own that record. But the Wild, who will also be in New Jersey on Wednesday, not against the Islanders later in the week, where a lot of these teams who come to town, especially the teams from way out west, whether you're Anaheim, LA, San Jose, Edmonton, as I just detailed a short time ago. But they won't play in Long Island. I guess they'll come back later on. Seattle at Philadelphia, Buffalo, Montreal tonight, Winnipeg, Calgary, and Carolina at Vegas. That's a nice early season matchup there. Tomorrow, New Jersey at Toronto, Edmonton at Ottawa, San Jose at New York, the Islanders. And I don't know if San Jose is making the 3. They should. San Jose at New Jersey Friday. So that means they're in the Garden over the weekend? No, then they're at Minnesota. Oh, wait. Yeah, they're at Minnesota Sunday. San Jose. No, they're playing the Rangers tomorrow. Or Thursday, I should say. My apologies. So San Jose at the Island on Tuesday. At the Garden Thursday, and then at New Jersey Friday. So anybody who wants to see the Sharks, to my guy Val out in the West Coast, they're in town starting tomorrow over the next few days. So for those who want to peep them, you have a shot to do so. Vancouver at Pittsburgh, Seattle at Washington, Florida at Boston. Hey, you go to two teams that started off 3-0 in the midst of 4-game losing streaks. Let's see how that fares. LA at St. Louis, Anaheim at Nashville, Columbus at Dallas, Colorado at Utah, Wednesday, Minnesota, New Jersey, Detroit at Buffalo, Montreal at Calgary. And that will wrap it up for the early part of the week. And, of course, we'll pick up the schedule there on Thursday when we reconnect at that time. That'll do it, my good people. Another episode just about in the books. And, yes, I'm in the other room today, different angles. So if you see me slouched or whatever, my apologies. I know I should stay more astute as I'm looking at the side screen here. I know I got to look square into the lens, which I usually do. But between an itchy nose and an itchy eyeball, this was one that was a bit of a slog. Not the podcast itself, but just me just trying to get through it with these, I don't know, just terrible. But let me stop there and let me continue. Thank you so much for carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is I have to say about what goes on in the wonderful world of sports. If you haven't done so, as I mentioned earlier, subscribe to the channel at YouTube, JAYREELZ, or at JAYREELZ on YouTube. And if you have a question, comment, or suggestion, you can hit me up on any of my social media accounts, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, the JAYREELZ Podcast, or on Instagram, just JAYREELZ. Twitter, JAYREELZ1, just a number. The old-fashioned way, the JAYREELZ Podcast at gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys and gals, because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do, people. It's in the blood. It's in the DNA since birth. Talking sports is what I love. It's what I aim to please at. For those who are out there following me, and I implore you to do so if you have not. And for those who have followed, I appreciate you guys and gals big time. Forever indebted to you, because you know, as long as I sit in front of this camera and microphone, I will always deliver the passion, fire, energy, fury with my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens in the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. From my lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are, the JAYREELZ Podcast always comes correct, direct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond. Peace, love, and God bless everybody. And until next time on the JAYREELZ Podcast, on the flip, baby.